Haas Cartwright was not all that Dan Blocker was. He was Bonanza's center. Fans were not only moved but also devastated as his last show aired. It felt strange, yet the cameras rolled. There was something lacking behind the smiles, and viewers sensed it in their stomachs. What actually transpired during those last moments? Why did it affect the show's legacy so severely? We explain why it's so difficult to see Dan Blocker's final Bonanza episode today. Haas's Dude. On December 10, 1928, Dan Blocker was born in Dalb, Texas. He was larger than many mature men, even as a youngster. Friends, however, recalled his compassion first, followed by his size. With the same smile that viewers would later see on television, Dan carried feed sacks, while his parents operated a tiny grocery during the Great Depression. He went to college because of football. He became an infantry sergeant during the Korean War. He attempted teaching English after being released, but the classroom felt cramped, so he moved west to perform. The combination of his warmth and size was adored by Hollywood. When Bonanza, a new color western, came out in 1959, producer David Dortor needed someone to play Eric Haas Cartwright. The position required a man who was both compassionate enough to hold injured animals and strong enough to wrestle oxen. Dorr immediately recruited Blocker once he showed there, with a laid-back smile and size 14 boots. On September 12, 1959, Haas made his television debut in NBC living rooms, and viewers immediately took to him. Little Joe was impetuous and Adam was analytical, but Haas was the star of the show. He saved lost calves, broke up fistfights, and told jokes that made Sunday night families laugh together. In less than a year, Blocker was signing autographs for kids who called him Mr. Haas outside the studio gates. He was pretty much the same off-camera. Dan was remembered by crew members for purchasing meals for extras or moving stuck automobiles. In a little house in the San Fernando Valley, he and his wife Dia reared 4 children. When castmates Lauren Green and Michael Landon visited for outdoor cookouts, Blocker would make chili in a bathtub-sized pot. Bonanza was the most popular show in America by season 5. Haas's broad visage was what sold cereal boxes and lunch pails, even as NBC issued posters depicting the cartridge riding horses. Blocker, however, never allowed his fame to get to him. Tipping his hat to tourists, he walked the lot without an entourage. He remarked, "I'm still the same fat kid from Texas, just with fancier shirts." In response to a question about achievement, the work schedule was torturous. Every year, 34 episodes are filmed in 8 days. The strain was placed on Blocker's health. He weighed well than 300 pounds, and he was sweating profusely from working in a studio. Nevertheless, he insisted that viewers should be given realism, and rejected using body doubles for scene writing. He was secretly concerned about typecasting. Although contracts bound him to the Ponderosa, he adored theater, and once performed Shakespeare's Autumn Staff. "People will switch the TV if Haas stops laughing," he told a pal. He laughed despite the pain in his joints. The heart of a popular series was this gentle giant. Understanding that warmth is crucial to comprehending why Dan Blocker's final episode, which was devoid of his typical delight, seemed too difficult to watch, and why the show and its viewers quickly suffered as a result of its absence. The audience had faith in Haas. They believed that if they needed assistance, he would appear on the screen. And every week, millions of people were devotedly attached to their sets by that uncommon confidence. A straightforward surgery becomes lethal. Dan Blocker was in pain off camera, but the Ponderosa was operating smoothly on camera in the spring of 1972. He suffered gallbladder problems while filming at night. He would double over, wait for the spasm to subside, and then he would be himself again. The studio physician suggested surgery. The removal of the gallbladder was thought to be easy. Patients frequently left within 2 days. Dan was sure he would only miss a couple pickup shots, so he set the operation for May 13. He joked with nurses about hospital meals when checking into Daniel Freeman Hospital in Los Angeles before daybreak. Cowboy hat-shaped flowers were sent by friends. When Dan got home, Michael Landon called and promised fresh chili. Without any problems, the surgeons made an incision, took out the swollen gallbladder, and closed it. Vital signs were flawless. When Blocker asked, "How soon till I can ride?" the recovery staff noticed his typical smile, but they were all unaware that blood had already begun to clot deep in his legs. Physicians refer to the threat as deep vein thrombosis. Rarely, clots can also break free, travel through the bloodstream, and become lodged in the lungs. Dan experienced unexpected chest pain that evening. Monitors let out a shriek. Sterilized hallways reverberated with code blue. At 4:10 a.m., the actor's heart stopped despite frantic resuscitation. He was only 43. News traveled as quickly as light. Dan Blocker was smashed over front pages by services. Believing they had misread, fans blinked. How could they lose Haas Cartwright to routine surgery? In a brief statement, NBC publicists mentioned a pulmonary embolism. Aside from sadness, the medical terminology sounded chilly. The Blocker home turned to become a stronghold of grief. Their sons, David and Dirk, and twin daughters, Deborah and Dana, were protected by their wife, Dolphia. Outside the fence, reporters set up camp. "Will Bonanza continue?" yelled one photographer, and he was chased away by a neighbor using a yard hose. The lights on stage 16 remained dark inside the studio. In any case, the crew assembled in a hushed circle, where Dan would practice lariat skills. A hat was put on a sowhorse by someone. Then came the tears. No one answered when Lauren Green showed up later, speaking in a raspy voice. "The big man should be here." The sponsors went into a frenzy. Despite being rated, Bonanza had lost ground in the previous season. The safety net was Haas. In the event that viewers tuned out, executives calculated the possible losses. However, the current crisis was more emotional than pecuniary. Scripts about Haas's wedding plans were the focus of writers' attention. Now those pages seemed like mean jokes. On May 16, funeral services took place in Inglewood. Thousands of admirers lined the pews, along with the cast and crew. Michael Landon's eulogy was as straightforward as a prairie dawn. "We laughed at him. He improved us." Both the casket and the memories weighed heavily on the pallbearers. The strong California sun felt strange without Dan's shadow. As the service came to a conclusion, there was no escaping the question that hung in the air. When a family's heart is removed, what happens to them, real or imagined? The pursuit of that solution would influence why Dan Blocker's final episode became unbearable to watch, and why the series is so awful. Hollywood in the morning. 2 days following the burial, NBC executives convened in a boardroom. Programming chief Mort Werner cleared his throat after reading the agenda, which said, "Post-Blocker strategy. No one wanted the job of speaking first. We are unable to recast." The audience would riot. Silence attested to the agreement. Wright leaving in silence, the second choice, seemed dishonest. The third option, killing the character on screen, ran the risk of alienating families who relied on the program for solace. All the paths, however, led to loss. In the meantime, sorrow thundered through the production. Haas's checked vests were folded and placed in storage bins by the wardrobe crew. Every pressing was a farewell. Unable to take his saddle to the truck, the prop master pulled it from its rack and stopped. Behind flats, stagehands screamed. Michael Landon offered to take on the role as creative director. "I'll find a way," he said to the writers, "but it must honor Dan." The writers' room turned into a war zone filled with creased sheets and pencils. It was suggested that Haas be sent on a cattle drive indefinitely. Another someone off-screen proposed to him. Landon gave a headshake. Haas refused to run. He refused to hide. "We must confront it." Finally, they decided on a daring move. "Recognize his passing, but only briefly. One line, short and sharp like a hammer." "Audiences would understand pain better than scripted avoidance," said Lauren Green, who supported the concept. In order to make room for quiet, he also sought to keep the other plots in the premiere as simple as possible. NBC marketing let out a moan. Dead air was feared by advertisers, but the cast remained in place. Since viewers had grown up with Haas as a true friend, they recognized that authenticity was more important than comfort. Fan clubs held candlelight vigils outside the studio. Kids sent in drawings of them cuddling calves. Columns and newspapers debated whether it was against TV's unspoken rules to kill a cherished character. "Television families rarely die young. This moment could change storytelling norms forever," wrote media expert Dr. Ruth Ellie. She was correct. Both danger and attention were perceived by sponsors. Some withdrew advertisements out of concern that sadness might damage their businesses. Others wagered that curiosity would increase the number of viewers. America's ambivalence was reflected in the contradiction. Half desired denial, the other half closure. NBC declared that production would start up again in July. There was only one sentence in the statement. "In its own way, the series will pay tribute to Dan Blocker." Reporters pleaded for information. No one showed up. The rumors swirled. Would there be a dream scene or a funeral episode? Anticipation boiled as viewers argued over dinner tables. The actors went back to stage 16 on July 10. Haas's dressing room door had a wreath hanging on it. His boots were still inside where he had left them, as if he may return for lunch. Everyone gathered for a speech by Landon. "We cherished him. Let us be honest. Each click of the slate reverberated more loudly than the last time the cameras rolled. The shockwave thus became resolved. In order to create an episode that would tear hearts and alter what family shows may dare to portray, the team decided to be honest rather than pretend. Nobody wanted to write the script. A Girl for Haas, a lighthearted title centered around his wedding, was the initial title of the season 14 premiere. The script was now on Michael Landon's desk, shredded. He took up a pen and penned Forever as a new title. Granite-heavy 2 syllables. He had a crazy plan. A single message that instantly destroys the Cartwrights' world. No flashbacks. No burial scene. Writing started at dusk and continued till daybreak. Crumpled pages littered Land in his study, but he cut out all the extraneous words, because he believed that viewers would sense what the characters couldn't. He typed the line that would become television history at 6 in the morning. P. Haas has left. Just 5 words. The network insisted on at least a few minutes of explanation, so he leaned back with burning eyes and murmured, "Dan, I hope this is right." Landon declined. He countered, "Grief isn't chatty." After lengthy arguments, NBC gave in, as long as the program had an action subplot to appease sponsors. Lauren Green supported him, saying, "The silence will speak louder than any speech." The authors maintained the emotional core, while adding a traditional Bonanza hook, a land grab dispute with outlaws. With Telegram in his pocket, Ben Cartwright rode home through dust clouds in the opening scene, which was filmed on August 2. On the first attempt, Green got the take exactly right. Even before the camera rolled, his eyes began to tear up. The crew held its breath and stood still. Green went outside and sobbed behind a prop wagon in between takes. No one bothered him. The scenario in the kitchen followed. Little Joe walks in and notices Pa's nose and face. As Joe, Landon had to do both acting and directing at the same time. He gave the operator instructions to pan to an empty chair, where Haas used to sit after holding a 10-second close-up on Green. On TV, 10 seconds is a long time. Audiences would fidget, some feared, but silence felt volcanic as they looked at dailies. Background music was cut out of such scenes by sound designers, leaving only the sound of the wooden floor. The absent heartbeat was emphasized by the lack of the well-known symphonic cue. Editors discussed including a single guitar note. Landon gave a headshake. Griff King shows up in search of employment elsewhere in the episode. His first sequence is reminiscent of Haas hiring a drifter in the pilot episode. The similarity, a fragmented echo of continuity, would be apparent to viewers. Knowing that any bluster would come off as intrusion, Tim Matt played Griff with a quiet intensity. 2 minutes less than usual, the final edit lasted 47 minutes. An NBC recap segment was offered. "No," answered Landon. Rather, they broadcast more advertisements. The narrative's void persisted, ready to face viewers who were unprepared for truth. The creators created a unique family western episode by prioritizing brevity over spectacle. Viewers were asked to sit in loss without help. It was because of that creative risk that Dan Blocker's final program became difficult to watch, and was later criticized by many. Only because there are instances when the truth hurts more than fantasy. The saddest scene on television. September 12, 1972, a Sunday. As the well-known Bonanza theme thundered, millions of people crowded around living room sets. However, the typical thrill felt different, anxious, tentative. Although fans were aware that something had changed, few were prepared for the blow that was about to be delivered. As if the land itself attempted to resist loss, the episode began with expansive views of the Ponderosa, which were more vivid than before. After 7 minutes, Ben Cartwright was seen on video reading a telegram. There were 10 quiet seconds. Americans leaned forward, feeling the pull of gravity. Some people froze, while others gasped out loud when Ben eventually said, "Haas is gone." Popcorn in midair. Never had the show hit so hard or spoken so gently. Later, phone logs showed an odd trend. NBC affiliate switchboards lit up during ad breaks. People on the phone questioned whether the death was genuine or a hoax. Many callers sobbed and hung up as operators without a script could only respond, "Yes, Dan Blocker passed away in May." Viewers were hardly aware of the land grab plotline. Minute-by-minute data was later highlighted by ratings analysts. Every time the camera strayed close to Hose's vacant chair, viewership increased after peaking at the telegram, and then declining throughout the outlaw scenes. Absence was now the main attraction. Critics reacted. Columnist Howard Prowie wrote, "The choice to speak grief in whispers feels brave, but it's bad for those seeking escapism." Variety's headline the following morning read, "Why Dan Blocker's last episode is too hard to watch." This resonated through talk radio and diner conversations. not as a criticism of quality, but as a shorthand for suffering. Schools stated that students showed up calm and asked teachers if actors could die just like everyone else. In their Sunday sermons about unexpected loss, ministers made reference to Haas. The incident was described by psychologists as a time of collective parasocial grief. Network executives, meanwhile, looked at ratings. Although the premiere garnered a respectable Nielsen share, memos revealed a concerning pattern. Before the last act, households tuned out. Theoretically, viewers switched off or changed channels due to emotional overload. Tears filled the air as commercials for toys and candy bars were shown. The fan letters blew up, blackboarded envelopes among sacks of letters. Some begged for a dream sequence to bring Haas back, while others complimented the honesty. As an example of how television may affect people's private lives, an Ohio adolescent wrote, "I turned the TV off and hugged my dad." The statement was featured on the evening news. The cast gathered in the studio to watch the transmission. Nobody said anything when the telegram scene arrived. Later, Michael Landon acknowledged feeling both worry and relief. "I'm glad the homage landed, but I'm afraid it will cast a shadow on the upcoming season." Truth over comfort was the broadcast's goal, and it was achieved. But there was a cost to that triumph. Viewers have experienced unadulterated loss. Lighter plots would not entice many to return. Whether Bonanza could continue without its gentle giant, or if the trail had stopped when those 10 silent seconds aired, would be revealed in the upcoming episodes. Following the Thunderclap debut, the ratings plummet. The 14th season of Bonanza continued to run like a wagon with a broken wheel. With rustlers and goofy hints, Episode 2 attempted light comedy, but the laughs felt forced. Viewers continued to visualize Haas's vacant chair. Nielsen's score fell by 3 points. The backstory of Griff King was introduced in Episode 3. Despite his best efforts, Tim Matt was called replacement Haas by fan letters. Once more, ratings declined. In the hopes that fresh scenery would help, NBC moved the show from Sunday to Tuesday evenings. Rather, casual viewers selected rival shows, and die-hard fans missed the memo. Tension rose in the writers' chamber. Executives wanted less sorrow, more romance, and more upbeat stories. Whiplash, according to Michael Landon, would further alienate viewers. Scripts that attempted to combine lively fights with abrupt, solemn looks at Hos's photo were the result of compromise. No one was satisfied with the musical tug-of-war. For the first time in years, the series was not in the top 20 by November. Meetings with sponsors became cold. "Can you make kids laugh again?" a cereal company executive questioned plainly. Producer Richard Collins said, "Not without the man who did most of the laughing." The agreement fell through. Morale declined along with the ratings. When the conclusion was in sight, crew workers who had previously hurried through setups began to move more leisurely. Lauren Green kept the mood lively by cracking cheesy jokes in between takes. But as soon as the camera started rolling, the hilarity stopped. Tim Matt questioned each line delivery, sensing animosity from some viewers. In the meantime, Michael Landon secretly drew out future projects. One night, he discovered the words, "Go Home Griff" scrolled on his parking lot trailer. Although he knew television survival, he still enjoyed Bonanza. Little House on the Prairie was based on his blueprint for a pioneer family play. Bonanza, a silent emblem of change, shrank as the notion expanded. The slump was verified by January ratings, which were 40% lower than those of the previous year. Charts known as the Haas effect were created by analysts, who connected the slide to Blocker's passing. Under titles like "Why Dan Blocker's Last Episode Doomed a Giant," newspapers featured quotes from them. It was an awful decision for NBC. Invest in advertising or reduce losses. Budgets were cut. Shoots at outdoor locations disappeared. The stories remained close to the interior sets. The vast Ponderosa felt claustrophobic, reflecting the show's diminishing reach. Supporters felt desperate. Plots became strange. Robbers of banks dressed as monks. Circus animals on the run tried to reclaim their youthful exuberance. Rather, they brought attention to what was lacking: the consistent, convincing warmth that Haas provided. Later, social scientists pointed to the season as evidence that viewers develop emotional bonds with characters similar to those of family members, and that when one is removed, sadness triumphs over amusement. Rumors of cancellation began to circulate by February. Members of the cast secured guest roles elsewhere. After 10 years of wandering the Ponderosa, extras removed souvenir nails from fence posts. Before the final choice, the set felt like a deserted village. It was a heart-stopping echo. Every point lost served as a reminder to everyone. of why Bonanza's recovery was unachievable, and why Dan Blocker's most recent episode hurt. The calm day in the West. NBC executives convened for a Sunday meeting on February 4, 1973. Graphs of ratings were spread out across the table. There is red ink all over. The decision was rendered quickly. After season 14, Bonanza would come to an end. The decision was final, but there hasn't been a press announcement yet. Lauren Green was reading scripts when she got a call that evening. After giving the vice president a courteous thank you, he sat quietly for an hour while using the phone. The actors and crew gathered on stage 16 the following morning. The news was revealed by producer Richard Collins. In April, we ride out. While some brushed away their tears, others nodded, anticipating it. Everyone was exhorted by Michael Landon to finish strong. Every moment felt like packing boxes at a childhood home, even as the filming went on. Cuts to the budget got worse. Shoots outside disappeared. Real hills were replaced by matte paints. Rather than using canyons to settle disagreements, the Cartwrights used living rooms. Fans took note. Letters questioned why the Ponderosa appeared to be becoming smaller every week. Absence and money were the unstated explanation. After considering a grand finale, NBC decided to play the remaining episodes in the sequence they were produced. This implied that The Hunter, a tale of Little Joe being hunted by a shooter, would be the final installment in the series. No farewells, no memories, just another journey. A final montage of HOS moments was advocated by the staff. Executives were concerned that it might cause further hurt. The middle ground? Nothing. Sets were struck by the team in late March. Carpenters stacked lumber for other shows while unscrewing porch beams. The props were marked for sale. The workers paused when they arrived at Haas's bedroom. Collins gave the order to close the door till the very final day. Michael Landon sneaked in by himself on wrap afternoon. Later, he claimed that the scent of recollections and pine filled the room. 11 April 1973. Let's head home, Pa. Green and Landon embraced as the last day of filming came to a conclusion. A hug that blurred actor and character was captured by the cameras as they continued to roll. A stagehand rang a cowbell one final time, reverberating through the rafters as the director printed the take and shouted, "That's a series wrap." A statement was released by NBC. Bonanza comes to an end after 14 seasons. Newspapers centered the narrative on a single fact. The loss of Haas never helped the show bounce back. Why Dan Blocker's last episode signaled the end was the headline. When the final broadcast aired on May 21, viewers, who were hoping for closure, saw Little Joe ride into the sunset instead. Many viewers felt deceived, and ratings increased. However, reviews criticized the non-finale for being too difficult to watch for all the wrong reasons. In 1988, The Next Generation, a reunion movie, revealed that Haas had drowned while saving a woman. A farewell delivered when hearts were still raw. A curtain falling not with trumpets, but with a sigh. Cast members scattering to new projects. Sets turning to splinters. But the story behind the ending continued to grow, teaching networks that when a character as beloved as Haas dies, the audience's grief can write the last line. Regardless of what the script says, the echo that never fades. Fans appreciated the response, but it also highlighted what had been missing. In 1980, reruns entered syndication worldwide, introducing new viewers to the gentle giant before they learned his fate. Many people found the show out of sequence, watching season 14 first, then gasping when earlier episodes revealed Haas alive. The Bonanza set disappeared from stage 16, but the echoes of Haas Cartwright continued to ride across decades. Media classes continue to highlight Ben's telegram as TV's first shared loss, and the industry learned when MASH planned to kill Colonel Blake in 1975. Producers played Dan Blocker's final episode for staff, warning them of the response. But the time frame felt backward, making the hurt much more painful. If the death feels cheap, fans revolt. If it feels honest, they still cry, but they stay. Dan Blocker's family protected his legacy. His sons, David and Dirk, became film producers. They were frequently asked if their father would have approved of today's film scene. Years later, when The Walking Dead faced cast departures, writers cited the HOS rule. For his 75th birthday, the family donated his boots and hat to the Smithsonian, with the exhibit plaque reading, "Kindness in a 10-gallon hat." The Ponderosa Ranch theme park in Nevada added a memorial trail with a bench overlooking Lake Tahoe. They responded that he preferred stories about decency, not explosions. Streaming rekindled interest in the 2020s, with algorithms noticing that episodes heavy on Haas drive longer watch times. Platforms curated Haas collections and social media challenges had teens mimic his belly laugh. Visitors leave flowers or rocks painted with the word Haas. A guest book is full of entries, like "You taught my dad to be gentle," and "Still too hard to watch." The emotional code Landon wrote, brevity, silence, honesty, remains potent in a culture of noise, caused TikTok users to stitch scenes of his kindness with stories of personal loss, making #HoscarTrite go viral. Clips of his kindness circulate with captions like, "Why Dan Blocker's last episode still breaks me." Even viewers born decades after his death report crying. The Bonanza experience is now cited in contracts by producers. In the event that a key actor passes away, clauses cover backup measures. Brief guidelines on how to deal with abrupt loss, respect, clarity, and little exposition are kept in writer rooms. One gallbladder surgery gone bad is the reason these policies exist. Even now, some people claim that it's terrible that a show made them sad, but they keep watching it. We will not outlive the echo. Each panel at fan conventions is closed with a ritual. As the moderator plays Haas's laugh, attendees stand with their hats over their hearts. Similar to the episode, the room fills with sound before being silent for 10 seconds. Some smile, some close their eyes. People cheer when the lights come up, not only out of nostalgia, but also because they have learned a valuable lesson. Characters are important because they serve as a reminder to improve. We will be outlived by the echo. Someone will encounter Haas, lose him, and experience that recognizable pain, as long as screens are illuminated. And each time it occurs, the oldest open wound on television imparts a new lesson in empathy. Did you find Dan Blocker's last episode particularly distressing? If this video reminded you of anything, please share your story in the comments section and give it a thumbs up.